Elk populations around the West are a puzzle of alternating abundance and scarcity. In some landscapes and terrain, elk remain rare and cherished. But in others, they're so commonplace that they become grass-eating, fence-busting nuisances. The best predictor of this uneven elk distribution in Montana is land ownership. On accessible public land, elk are often scarce, much to the frustration of the do-it-yourself hunter. But on private land, where hunting pressure is limited, elk are often abundant to the equal frustration of traditional ranchers who rely on that grass and those fences for their livelihood. It's often a simple fence that defines both land ownership and elk distribution. Regardless of how we identify ourselves, we often see the fence and lose sight of what we share. When it comes to wildlife management in Montana, focusing on what we have in common on both sides is a path to balancing those patterns of elk scarcity and abundance. That starts with understanding why elk can be such divisive agents in Montana's rural communities and among Montanans who often view them very differently.
My name's Matt Wickens, and we're in Winifred, Montana. I've been here roughly 21 years, 21, 22 years, and like I say, yeah, first generation, we're on our own, we're not on any family deal. My involvement, my wife and kids, we're very involved in the community. You know, these are small towns, everybody's got to kind of do everything to make them work. Why I ranch? You know, actually, I don't know, it's just bred into me. You know, I could probably just outfit and do recreational business and probably financially be better off if we focused on it 100%, but it's just in my blood to run cattle, and it's what I like doing, and I love growing some crops and raising cattle. It's just what we do. You got on the flatlands, we got ag fields, and then 100 yards away you drop off into great cover, deep breaks, and very conducive for elk and really all kinds of wildlife. The elk love the cover crops, they love sandpoint, they love the hay fields. This is big sage. There's 3 lobes. See the 3 lobes there, that's how you identify big sage. It is high in protein, it's nutritious, it's a little pungent. They're smart, they're gonna go to the highest quality food with the lowest amount of pressure. It's not rocket science. When we have a lot of that nutrition, we have a lot of elk. For me, it's not really a challenge. I mean, because I have monopolized on the wildlife. You know, we manage them, we're outfitters, so it's an asset for me because I have turned it into financial stability for our ranch. But a lot of people, that's not the case. You know, for them, it's just a headache, it just costs them money, they're just destroying crops and fences.
I've seen a lot of changes here in my 40 years, and I started hunting here when I was a little kid. And just in perspective, in the late 60s, early 70s, you could hunt anywhere here, anywhere. And you know, you didn't even really need to ask. And at that time, I can remember my father-in-law say that if you saw elk in the year, you were lucky. And now we're chasing elk off underneath hayfields, starting here first part of May. But as far as elk numbers here, perspective-wise, for me, the economic adversity of that has been tremendous, and that's really come to fruition here in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, we had to put up tall stack yards because the elk were coming in mid-January when it got 20, 30, 40 below zero. Before that, we never had any problem at all. But as the numbers increase, of course, they have to have somewhere to eat. So now, the last 5 years has been, unfortunately, just exponentially changed. And I had a neighbor tell me, as soon as you put pivots that's going to be in, it'll just be a magnet. And it literally has turned into a magnet.
we have landowners who are covered up in elk and want to kill them all. And on the flip side, you have sportsmen and they can't have enough elk. So I don't know. Hunting plays a big role. How you get there, I don't know.
I grew up hunting. Like I said, I never hunted anywhere else besides eastern Montana up until probably 5-6 years ago. This is where I learned how to hunt, and this is still to this day, this is still where I enjoy hunting the most. From a hunter's perspective, I think the opportunity to fill your freezer for an entire year off of one bull elk is something that can't be discredited. You know, you have a bull elk could, 350 inches of antler on top of it will dwarf even the biggest mule deer. We've got some fantastic resources that have really come of age in the digital technology phase of what hunting has become. And in some ways, I think of it as a double-edged sword where you know what is publicly available and you know what is not. I've always kind of used the description of hunters as kind of behaving similar to water. And they're going to follow the path of least resistance. And it's easier for a hunter to find areas of public land, go hunt that, than it is for a hunter to go up, knock on a landowner's door early in the morning. Increased pressure on public lands, moving game and moving animals back onto private land. From the landowner perspective, there are real on-the-ground problems to a bottom line, financially throughout the year of having an elk herd in your, whether it be alfalfa or, whatever.
The reality is you let a guy in or a couple guys in and they come in and they kill 1 or 2 cows and then they move 500 elk back through the fence or maybe a couple fences and then they're back off on the neighbor's place. Well, that's not really a net win. That's why it's not super appealing, and that's why a lot of these landowners after a while just kind of quit allowing access, because it's more of a pain than a benefit. I think anything that's going to be a long-term solution has got to be incentive-based. If you made it to where it was desirable for me to have elk on my property, and then I can give access because I'm, and ultimately when I'm talking incentives, everybody likes to dance around it, but it's financial. That's the bottom line, is people need to be paid because there's real expenses involved with having lots of elk on your land.
As far as block management goes, we've been in the block management program I have since it's almost 25 years, I think. Hank Favich was the game warden at the time when we started doing it. He said, I think you should get into it. You're having elk problems. Before that, we didn't really have hardly any elk problems. He says, but this makes it you're going to be compensated for those people you're letting in now. You're not going to see a difference as far as what's going to happen. He says you're going to run into some hunter conflicts, there's no doubt about that, but at least the compensation will make up some difference. You're already doing that, you might as well be compensated to let these hunters in. And for me, I think it's worked really well. We've had our conflicts. We've had hunters that come in and not obey rules, and I've thrown people off. Remember, it's by permission only.
So this is, so Lance, they got this place is in block management.
I used to read the comments cards, and 95% of people are just thankful to have a place to go and love it and really appreciate it, and then there's a few turds that'll say I didn't see anything, but most of the people I think really appreciate it. It's the only access to, it's one of the larger ones in the state, but we have a lot of out-of-staters. It's not hard to find out where the block management's at, and so you combine that with the in-state pressure, with the local pressure and everything else, and it just ends up being it's a lot.
Do you think the financial compensation is adequate?
I look at it as a public service. As far as for what we're getting paid for it, it's not about the money. Hunting is, it is a privilege, but it gives the common person a place to hunt and a place to go and an opportunity. So But as far as the financial end of it, no. I mean, that's why a lot of places don't stay in block management, because you can make a lot more money leasing it out or whatever. Perfect world, we'd have lots of wildlife, you know, people could have access, you wouldn't be a rich man's sport. Cows would have lots of grass, everything would be happy, market's good, but it's not a perfect world, so.
Yeah, we can't have it all.
No, no.
You can be honest, I think in 2023, if you're not a landowner that is interested in diversifying your land, there's a lot of landowners that could go, you know, out of business.
So for us, the outfitting business came with the ranch. And ultimately that was kind of how it was presented to me at first, was outfitting business first, ranch second. And like, it's the only reason that we're still here is the outfitting business has floated our ranching operation. You know, we used to joke about it, you know, the outfitting supports our ranching habit. Well, it's the truth a lot. The ag economy goes up and down, we'll have some good years, but this has kept us here. I know the general perception is that every landowner is, we're all some extremely wealthy, non-resident, whatever, but that's not the case. I mean, there's the silent majority of us are just out here scraping by.
You know, it's bad apples are the ones that make the news. Bad apples are the ones that get across social media, and there are bad apples in the hunting community. There are bad apples in the landowner community. Whether that be gates not being closed, you know, litter and garbage, that type of stuff. And be honest, knocking on your door at 4:30 in the morning, you know, the day before they show up to hunt. And trespassing. You know, I think the broad scope of the hunting community is interested in helping landowners and try to address some of these issues.
Just to be here has meant a lot to me because I'm not sure where else I would go. And if you talk to anybody that's been in the ag business for years and years and years, you'll get the same answer. It's not the money. And it is that the draw is that you're part of the process of the land and doing that with all its hardship.
We're all land rich and cash poor, and we don't need sympathy or anything for that. I'm not looking for anything like that, but like this divide of people of like private landowners versus sportsmen, to me it's just it's a crazy division. It's really shocking to me how we've pitted ourselves against each other, and then we do battle in the legislature and spend all this money and waste all this time and fighting over things that if we sit down, the agreement is substantially more than the disagreement here on most every issue.
It's one thing to understand the basis of your neighbor's perspectives on elk and elk management, but how, in a real world of competing distractions and values, can we actually demonstrate neighborliness? You can get to know your neighbor not as a name on a map or a mailbox, but as a person. Introduce yourself, share a meal, get to know the names of their kids and what they do for fun, but also get to know what keeps them up at night. Help out where you can. Maybe it's moving pears to summer pasture or helping sight in a rifle. Maybe it's fetching baler parts while you're in town. Maybe it's fixing fences. Participate in public processes. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has abundant opportunities to discuss elk seasons and hunt management. Get to know your local biologist and game warden. Learn about season setting proposals. Think about the implications not only on yourself, but on your neighbors. Participate in community-based working groups. Some of the most effective and durable elk management solutions in Montana came from the ground up, from neighbors figuring out what works in their valley or their region. Groups like the Devil's Kitchen Working Group and the Breaks Elk Working Group have all demonstrated success in community-based solutions. Engage with nonprofits working to improve relationships. Outfits such as the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, Montana Master Hunter Program, and others are interested in solving problems, managing elk, creating and keeping access, and can act as worthy advisors for neighbors looking for solutions. If Montanans could view fences less as reasons to divide us and more as opportunities to come together, we'll be well on our way to making elk a symbol of all that we have in common. Icons of the Wild West and occupants of working landscapes.